Hey everybody. I just wanted to make another video. I'll try to keep this quick. Finishing off the close reading that we started in class. Um, yeah, because I feel like we got halfway there and I want to get all the way there so you can see how it comes together nicely. So just to review where we were looking at the key moment of how the son keeps asking about restaurants. Because that's a bit of a mystery as to why. And why that would be important. Like throwing it in once throws out a cute kid who's really loves restaurants, but having it in four times in the story, um, again, is that red flag that there's something to unpack here. So let's unpack it. Um, as we did in class, we started pulling out a lot of different threads, but nothing's really come together yet. Just a review, looking for patterns. There's a question of, is there even a restaurant that he's asking for? Do they have enough money? A relationship between the mother and the son, and then the relationships between different identities can all come into play in the idea of a restaurant. And same thing here. Um, Different approaches where the kid has a childish fascination with restaurants, which can tie back to like the fascination with the Western way of thinking of preparing food and consumerism, where the mom is not even really registering what the kid's saying, right? She sort of ignores that. Um, there's more important issues on her mind, which is what the story is focused on. It's focused on those important issues. But that doesn't mean these other issues aren't there. And so a lot of us in the class read her response to the kid as a lack of respect, like not even answering the kid's questions. Um, and that's something I want to dive into here. Other questions: why did the older sister leave Letitia? Maybe because she felt disrespected. The same way that the son's going to eventually figure out, my mom doesn't even answer my questions. I'm out of here, man. Going somewhere where I'm respected. Um, get the respect I demand, deserve. But on the other side of the coin, you could argue she's letting the kids figure it out for themselves, and that's what I want to look at. Because at the end of the story, her daughter does kind of figure it out for herself. And then we got into some symbolism here, which I do want to dive into a bit more too, and then show you how that can all hopefully come together. And I've already wasted 3 minutes, so let's go. We looked at the first example, but we didn't get time to look at the second example. So the first example is because at the beginning of the story, when they're approaching the border for the first time, asking him to go to the restaurants, and he completely gets ignored, told to go look at the museum. Um, the most he gets is, "You want another orange crush," uh, which we can get into. But I want to look at the second time that this comes up. Uh, the idea of the restaurant comes up because it's a nice, what's called bookends at the start and the end of the story, like a framing almost. Because once we get past the climax and finally get across the border, look what happens. Like right away, my mother rolled the car forward. Television people scrambled out of the way. They ran alongside the cars. We pulled away from the border. When we couldn't run any further, they stood in the middle of the highway, waved and waved and waved. The story could end there. They made it through, victory. But there's more. Just like in life, there's always more. So we got to Salt Lake City the next day. Leisha was happy to see us. And that first night, look what she does. She takes us out to a restaurant that made really good soups. The list of pies took up a whole page. I had cherry pie, the American tradition. So there's something there to that American analysis. All of the analysis, actually, you can find. Even the mom had chocolate. Look at that. Uh, Letitia said that she saw on the television that night, and us on the television on that night. During the meal, she had us tell the story over and over again. So tomorrow we're going to talk about storytelling and what it can do and the role it plays in our lives. I don't want to get to that right now, but I do want to look at some of the things that we were talking about, because some of those loose ends that we pulled out from the beginning example of restaurants, they kind of get tied up here into some nicer examples. So, or a nice conclusion. And I'm not going to get into the money side, but I am going to get focused on the relationship, not only familial but also between American and Blackfoot. Um, so here, how is it important? Well, if we're talking objectively, after the climax, so after all that tension is released, what happens? It's like a celebrate. They celebrate by doing an American thing, by doing this, or we could just say Western, I think is a good way to think about it, because Western sort of gets at the American and Canadian cultures as opposed to the Indigenous Western thing. This a Western thing of eating at a restaurant, which is almost, I mean, and another thing to note here, who takes them there? The sister. The sister's showing them this life that she's chosen and the benefits of it. And not only that, who does it please the most? Sister pleases the brother, right? That bond that we had been questioning the whole story. Does the brother like the sister like the brother? At the end of the day, they come together in this moment through soup and restaurants. Like, finally, someone's listening to the brother. He's respected. Now, you could read that two ways. You could read that being like, well, the sister knows how it feels like to be not listened to and not respected by the mom, so she's filling that gap, right? Almost as like a criticism of the mom. But that argument has a hole in the fact that the mom was eating too. Mom enjoyed it as well. It's like the expression, and this is the subjective connection here, have your cake and eat it too. What does that mean? In this situation, I would argue that there's enough evidence that the mom is happy with this development. Why? Because I think that comes back to her way of parenting, which is not a Western way, or at least what we think is Western way, because we had that judgment of her of being like, she's disrespecting her kids, she's not listening and treating them with respect, which is a normal response to have. As children with parents, I struggle constantly with my parents feeling like they're listening to me and respecting my opinions. It's a struggle everybody goes through. But what's interesting with this mom is that by not even answering and focusing on the stuff that she knows is really important, she's giving her kids room to grow. And how do they grow? And the language there is very important, giving it room to grow, because the nature analogy works really well here, and we'll see why in a second. But how do they grow? How do they grow? Well, the sister and brother come together. Not only that, the sister comes to value her heritage. Why, though? Not because the mother was telling her to, and this is important, and you should connect to your roots. No, the mom says, do you want to leave your roots? Go ahead. See what the other side is like. That's fine. I'm a proud person. I know what being a proud person is like. I know that I can't convince you, so I'll let you do that. And what the result of that, which Letitia may take as disrespect, is actually a different type of respect, a respect that you can figure this out yourself. You're smart enough. I have confidence in you as my child. And because of that, by giving kids room to grow, she allows this relationship to grow between sister and brother, allows the sister to take them to the restaurant, to have that victory and to build that bond, and allows her sister the time she needs to figure out who she is in the world. And so, and related to all of that is the symbols of the restaurant. We had established that that the water runs through this whole story. For from the water tower they see as they drive up to the border in the very first lines of the story. Water's there, and water comes up in different ways. There's the natural way, the water we see in nature in balance, but that's not really used in the story. In the story, since we live in a predominantly Western culture, we're seeing water commodified as coffee or as soup. But soup has a nurturing quality. What I'm trying to get at here is complicated, but you could argue that the water here. What was I trying to say about the water? I think I have a better point about the family. The family one is, I don't know, I'm not all the way there yet on the water, but just to show you what I mean about the water, look at the end of the story. Because the beginning and end passages are always objectively very important in a story, arguably more so than the conflict and the climax, or equally so, I'd say. So let's look at this last paragraph. It was evening, it was almost evening when we left Coutts. I watched the border through the rear window until all you could see were the tops of the flagpoles and the blue water tower, and they rolled over a hill and disappeared. So the water tower is one of the last images we have that disappears. What is a water tower? A water tower is exactly what we're talking about, taking the natural world and systematizing it, like setting it up to fit into the Western culture of towns and communities and sewage system, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just a different approach to nature, right? And one that's sort of that they're sort of leaving behind here to return back to the reserve, to return back to their life. So what's the goal of all this? The goal of all this is to be able to pull out a strong thesis. And here we do have a strong thesis about the mother's parenting style. And if we wanted to relate it to larger issues of Western culture versus Indigenous culture, we can use the restaurant symbolism and dive into the water, so to speak, and figure that all out. But we're there that we have, in the end, a strong thesis, which I'll finish this off with because I've been going for 10 minutes now. Something like that, 10 minutes, so enough. The mother's parenting style is one to give her children room to grow, which may be viewed through a Western perspective as being disrespectful, but through an indigenous, I spelled that wrong, I'm sure, lens, we'll talk about lens tomorrow, but through an indigenous lens, it is actually a high form of respect. She believes her children are smart enough to figure it out. Their challenges. Something like that. So through this process, just by looking at this one important passage, we've come with a really interesting thesis about this story, an interesting idea about one of the hidden meanings, and there's many, of one key moment. So that's what we'll be working on as a group all next week and a little bit tomorrow too. Thanks for watching. Bye. Oh no, I didn't stop it. Oh God. I just got rid of my way to stop it. How do I stop it?